Hello, I'm back talking about Hell's Kitchen, good old HK. Last week, right around this time, I covered the first episode where we got to meet our top 20 for the Battle of the States. We saw the signature dish challenge. We got to see our first glimpses as to how these chefs are. And now, episode 2, we've got a challenge and we've got our first dinner service. So let's just get right to it. Um, Just let's just pick up right where the premiere episode left off, with a giant box falling from the ceiling in front of everybody and scaring the crap out of them. The box is full of ice and scallops, or scallops, whichever you prefer. I just say scallops because I don't know. I'm stubborn. I hear Ramsay say scallops, and I'm like, oh, that's British. I'm not British, so. But anyway, scallops fall from the ceiling, and my immediate thought is this is season 22's first challenge all over again. That literally, it was a scallop challenge to start that season off. It wasn't an elimination challenge, but it was a punishment pass challenge. So, so yeah, I was just thinking, really, just 2 seasons later, we're starting off with another scallop challenge. But in all fairness, the show is now based in Connecticut, which is a destination spot for seafood. You know, like it's a lot of people like to think of Massachusetts and New York, which Connecticut is right in between, as being the big seafood house. But Connecticut has a fairly long coastline. It's not a big state, but it's got a long coastline. All right. I don't know. It couldn't have been some other kind of seafood though, just so it's not season 22's first challenge all over again. I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking. That's how I felt about it. But yeah, maybe I'm just nitpicking. Well, Ramsey goes over what the challenge is. He says that the scallops dishes that they make, they must be delicious and visually appealing. Carlos says he's from Alaska, so he thinks he's got it in the bag. Ramsey says scallops have a small margin of error, and so do the chefs because if the dish exposes their weakness, they're going home. Now, I'm not a big fan of day one eliminations on any show. I mean, okay, I guess technically this isn't day one, but it's before the first dinner service. I guess I'm just thinking of the Big Brother day one elimination. Just like those are terrible. But yeah, just I don't know. I don't like eliminating someone before the first dinner service. And to be honest, the 2 people in the past that were eliminated before the first dinner service, Kenneth and Ava, the people who made it to the first dinner service were way worse than they were. In Kenneth's case, it was Elliot. In Ava's case, it was Matthew. Those are honestly 2 of the weakest chefs I think that have ever been on this show. So yeah, we're back to it. I would be remiss if I did not mention that in season 21, Battle of the Ages, it was almost a, a pre-first dinner service elimination with Ileana, but she talked Ramsey out of it. So in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, if you make a good enough case for yourself, you can stay. I mean, Ileana was not the worst chef that season, but she wasn't particularly good either. I mean, it was 18 people. She came in 11th place. That's very mid. And hello to my first viewer. Thank you for joining. I appreciate you. Anyway, the best dishes will get punishment pass. The best per team. He's giving out 2 punishment passes, one for the red team, one for the blue team. The challenge begins. The chefs dive into the pile of ice and scallops to get their scallops. They had buckets with them, so it looked like they were having to scoop up some of the ice too. I don't know what that was all about. I mean, Yeah, yeah. Cook the ice. See how that goes. Um, Anaya is grossed out by it, and she's from Delaware. Delaware's on the water, so you'd think she might have done this before. So I found that kind of interesting. Don't get me wrong, it did look gross, but I am not a chef and I don't even like seafood. So I'm allowed to think it looks gross. She's doing that. Ellie says that you can't mess up Ramsey's favorite item. It's one of his favorites. I don't know if it's his number one favorite, but it's certainly up there. So then we head over to the Blue Kitchen, check in on Jaden. He thinks that coming from Martha's Vineyard gives him an advantage because Martha's Vineyard is an island. Like Massachusetts is already, like I said earlier, big seafood hub, but Martha's Vineyard is like the hubbiest seafood hub in Massachusetts, okay? Like just anything, any kind of fish you could ever want, like you can get it there. Okay, maybe not every kind of fish in the world, but there's a lot of fish there. And Jaden notes that the majority of his competitors are landlocked. So, so yeah, like Carlos, Jaden thinks he's at an advantage. We check in on Chase from Montana, one of those landlocked states. He says that he has never shucked a fresh scallop, sorry, and that does make sense. By the time he gets to Montana, it's probably not that fresh anymore. And, they're in Connecticut. Like the scallop he was working on was probably pulled from the ocean that day. He's also making a ginger fennel broth with parsnip puree, and he opts to use his shell, but just place it on the shell because no one else is using it. Everyone else just got rid of them. So we're at the 13-minute mark. Karen Marie is working on purple sweet potato puree, port wine creamy polenta with with Romanesco cauliflower, and anchovy relish. Alexandra notes she doesn't know every element in the dish, but it sounds like too much. And sous chef Michelle, even says she doesn't need all of it. So yeah, I'm just Cara Marie is our vegan, so she's probably trying to use stuff she's a little more familiar with. Although anchovy is not vegan; that's a fish. So she is branching out a little bit beyond just the scallop. But she's from Rhode Island, so she she should probably know how to make scallops. Also, if you're a chef on HK, you should know how to make scallops. So yeah, that's what Karen Marie's up to. Head back over to the Blue Kitchen, and Carlos is doing a rosemary skewered scallop. And when I say skewered, I mean he puts a sprig of rosemary and sticks it right through the scallop. That was a very suggestive gesture I just made. I apologize. I didn't think that went through. Anyway, but that's what he does. He sticks the thing into his scallop. Anthony sees it and he's like, I would never do that. And Anthony's from Iowa, another landlocked state. Like Iowa is just about the most landlocked state there is. Well, it's up there. Maybe Nebraska is the most landlocked. Anyway, when he did that, I'm like, this guy is doomed. Ramsey said someone might be eliminated, and if you're doing this to a scallop, uh, like scallops are not meant to be on a kebab, okay? And I'm just thinking, how do you mess up seafood this bad? You're from Alaska, the only state that borders two oceans. But yeah, that's what Carlos is up to. Head back over to Red, checking on Anaya. She's doing goat cheese grits with pineapple rum chutney. She's planning to pan sear them. Maddie is making a pesto cream sauce and she's pan searing her scallops as well. And Michelle says, "So it seems like you're all pan searing." And this prompts Anaya to be like, "Okay, I'm going to grill mine." Think outside the box a little bit, stand out a little more. I'm sorry for rubbing my nose so much. This was a thing when I used to stream before. Every stream I did, as soon as I started, I'd have to rub my nose a lot. I'm really sorry. I'm trying not to. It's a psychosomatic thing, I know. Anyway, 4 minutes left. Chase is worried his scallops won't be cooked enough. We get down to the last minute. Everyone gets their dishes done and served. We get that typical scramble we get as the clock winds down, and they all get their food up. Now, in the past, like last season, well, no, not always, but in the past, Ramsey has left it up to the teammates to decide which ones are the best or the worst or whatever. No, just the best. He leaves the best up to them. But he's been burned a couple times, so this time he's left it to sous chefs James and Michelle. And he's choosing the dishes that he'll taste because he's not going to taste all of them. So we get a montage of the chefs talking to the sous chefs, explaining their dishes. Kat has a roasted yellow pepper, tomato, and corn puree with her scallops. She's confident in her plating skills. She is from Maryland, so it's another seafood state. Well, a good seafood state. James tastes Carlos's scallops, his rosemary skewered scallops, and he just says, "Okay," when Carlos describes it. That's all, just okay. Jada tells Michelle she cooked her scallops for 3 minutes. Chris, with his scallops, is made a romesco puree with miso. He notes James is a stone wall, but he feels confident about his cook. Maddie tells Michelle that she made a mistake by rushing, and Michelle says to stop starting with her mistakes. And that tells me Michelle has been to therapy because that's a thing they tell you in therapy. Like, don't lead with where you mess up. Like when I started seeing my therapist, one of the first things he told me was, like I said, I was bad at something, but he's like, don't frame it that way. Frame it as you're learning how to do this thing. And obviously, it stuck with me because I've been seeing him for over almost 2.5 years now. Over 2.5 years, I think. About 2.5 years. But yeah, that shows a real lack of confidence on Maddie's part, and like that's almost as bad as being a bad cook, being a cook with no confidence. Because I mean, she's not a bad cook. She got a 4 out of 5 on her signature dish, but you know, she may not have all the confidence that she needs. We check in on Jaden. He has a brown butter with his scallops. And then finally, Cara Marie is worried she did too much. So James says that only 3 dishes from the blue team were good enough. Ramsey says he expected better. First up is Antonio from New Hampshire. He made pan-seared diver scallops with southern roasted corn succotash. Ramsey likes the Jackson Pollock touch of artistry. Because remember that was part of it. They can't just taste good, they gotta look good. Like Ramsey's only tasting good looking dishes today. So yeah. Antonio was the first one. Second is Chris. He made seared scallops with mushroom 2 ways, pickled and braised, with Chinese eggplants. He calls the pickled mushrooms the hero with the scallops. And then finally, we got Jaden, my Martha's Vineyard guy, my Massachusetts guy. I don't care where in Massachusetts you're from. I'm rooting for you. But honestly, I'm happy Massachusetts and New Hampshire because I told you last week on any reality show I root for New England, wherever they're from. But yes, Ramsey says Jaden should nail a scallop considering he's from Massachusetts. He made seared scallops on carrot puree with corn and bacon succotash, kumquats, and crispy shallots. Scallops cook beautifully and the dish looks vibrant. Ramsey says they made it difficult for him to choose, but he does choose, and he chooses Chris. So Chris receives the blue team's punishment pets. Now it's the red team's turn. Michelle says that 4 red dishes are good enough. First up is Lisa. Pea puree with sunchokes and radishes sauteed in butter and herbs, along with her scallops, obviously. Just assume there are scallops in all these dishes because it was the challenge. Uh, Ramsey likes the combo and says it looks stunning. She had the best signature dish, and now she's placing in the top for this challenge. So Lisa is Lisa's one to watch, I think. Next up, we've got Jada, who also did well in the first challenge. I, yeah, she was the other 5 out of 5 on the red team. So with her scallop, she has a citrus beurre blanc with seasonal succotash, heirloom tomatoes, charred and roasted corn, and asparagus. Ramsey loves the cross-hatched look of the scallops, and they're cooked perfectly. She did say 3 minutes, which, from what I've gathered, is the magic cooking time for scallops. Although I guess it can vary based on how big the scallops are. You got to figure in HK they have a standard, like make them this size so they cook in this amount of time. So the third person from the red team to have her name called is Anaya. She made her grilled scallops with goat cheese grits. The goat cheese because it gives it more punch. And Ramsey says that grilling scallops is more difficult than a pan, and she did an outstanding job. So the fact that she did something different with the preparation of the scallops and nailed it, like Anaya also one to keep an eye on. She may have only gotten a 4, only a 4, in the signature dish challenge, but you know, hey, Kyle, the winner last year, he only got a 4 out of 5. So don't roll anything out. And the final member of the red team to get called is Kat. With her scallops, she made roasted yellow pepper and tomato puree with ginger and garlic, as well as a corn salad. And she says it's visually popping and vibrant, and she did an expensive delicacy justice. And after taking a moment to think about it, Ramsey calls Anaya the winner. So Anaya has gotten the red team's punishment pass. Now, there's something I would like to point out here. Everyone who did well in this scallop challenge is from a coastal state. Jaden's from Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard, no less. Tony's from New Hampshire. It doesn't have much of a coastline, but it does have a coastline. And crap, who was the other one? Chris, a winner from New Jersey. I think I was trying to think of the state instead of the person. And then for the red team, Lisa from California, Jada from Florida, Anaya from Delaware, and Kat from Maryland. All coastal states. So they may have had something of an unfair advantage, but at the same time, like I said, if you're coming on this show, you know scallops are on the menu, you should probably practice cooking them. Now it's time, excuse me, now it's time for the disappointing dishes. Ramsey asked Michelle for the first disappointing dish from the red team. Michelle says, Cara Marie. And in her confessional, she's like, I knew it was too much. Ramsey immediately notes that it's over the top. She says that she wanted to layer the flavors, but Ramsey says that it can stand alone because it's a scallop. And Cara Marie notes in her confessional she didn't do enough in the signature dish challenge, and then she overcompensated this time. The next one called for the red team is Maddie. Well, just like she did with Michelle, she starts by explaining the problems she had making the dish. Ramsey says the puree tastes good, but the scallops taste like they've been steamed. He says they'd send this back right away if you serve this in a restaurant. My chair just sunk on me. Sorry. It's an old chair. Forgive me. Blue team's turn. Ramsey asks James for the first disappointing dish, and it's Chase. And something I noticed when I was rewatching the episode, I didn't notice it the first time, but as he said it, a huge, huge bead of sweat fell from James's head. And I'm like it fell like out from his ear, I guess. I mean, it was kind of far from his head. And like, he's bald. How does a bead of sweat fall that far from his bald head? You know, if he had hair, then like if he had my hair, it could like just ride the hair down and go out. But no, it just I don't know. I noticed it and I've been thinking about it all day. So I had to make note of it. Anyway, Chase is worried about going home for the first dinner service. He made a pan-seared scallop with parsnip puree, fennel ginger broth, and beach mushroom. Ramsey says it looks like cat puke. Not what you want to hear. He notes his impressive elk signature dish and how he's now serving this. So, I mean, you gotta remember, most of these people made good signature dishes. Not everybody. Like, you know, Cara Marie didn't, and now she's in the bottom. And Carlos didn't, and now he's in the bottom because he is the second one who is called. He has a rosemary skewered scallop with rosemary coconut reduction. He really likes rosemary. And pea salad. Ramsey says the rosemary is overpowering and the scallops are solid from being overcooked. Ramsey notes he's from a state surrounded by water. Carlos feels like he's let his state down. Now, not only is Alaska surrounded by water, but it is the biggest state, and it has the biggest coastline of any state. Like literally thousands of miles of coastline, probably. Maybe 1,000. I don't know. I'm not an expert on Alaska's geography. I just, you know, like I said, it borders two oceans. He should be better at this. So Ramsey says that someone is leaving now because if they can't cook scallops now, there's no way they can be his head chef. And unsurprisingly, he eliminates Carlos. We're having two disappointing dishes already, both of which were seafood, I might add. In his goodbye message, he says he doesn't know what happened because he doesn't overcook seafood. I mean, he did it twice, so I mean, either the nerves really got to him or he's not that good. Sassy Seth. Used to do that all the time when I covered Big Brother. So Ramsey sends everybody back to the dorms. Cara Marie says she's vegan and also does CrossFit. It reminds me of a joke I once heard. A vegan, a CrossFitter, and an atheist walk into a bar. I know because they told everybody right away. She challenges Paul to an arm wrestling match. She notes his forearm and says he either plays video games or spent a lot of time alone as a child. He says, "We'll go with number one." Yeah, okay, Paul. So they do arm wrestling and Cara Marie destroys him. And he just like hides under the table. So that was kind of funny. So they go back to the kitchen. The sous chefs give a crash course on the menu. They go really fast, which overwhelms a few people, mostly Bradley. And he is asking Michelle several questions after it's done. So, you know, not the best look for him. And then they're sent back to the dorms. Everyone gets their knife kits, sponsored by Hexclad. Henry name drops Hexclad in his confessional, so that means they probably kicked him a couple extra bucks for doing that. Sydney says she's never wanted kids, but the knives are now her babies. Yeah, that's not unhinged at all. You know, I already like Sydney, but now hearing that she's kind of unhinged, I like her more. So the chefs go back to the kitchens. They're just going back and forth in this episode. Prep in the kitchens. Both teams are encouraging each other. Randy tells Marino to open HK for the first time this season. Now, before I get into the dinner service, I want to start with telling you the stations that everybody's on. First of all, there's a tableside dish. It's pesto shrimp scampi flambe, which is an appetizer. And that is going to be cooked by Ellie and Sydney for the red team, and Jaden and John for the blue team. On appetizers, Riley and Chase for the blue team, Jada and Elena for the red team. Fish, Antonio and Paul for blue, Kat and Maddie for red. Meat, Cara Marie and Lisa for red, Anthony and Henry for blue. Garnish, Chris is by himself in the blue kitchen. And in the red kitchen, it's Anaya and Alexandra. All right. So that's where everybody is. Blue team gets their first order. One flatbread, one scallop, two risotto, one table side. Which no one acknowledges until Ramsey says, "Hud?" Like, come on, guys, you got to be yes chef and everything. I'm just like, that's a bad omen for this team right there. Like, if that's how you're starting, then like right away, I'm thinking the blue team ain't winning this service. Like, it might be a joint loss, but th- there was not going to be a scenario where the red team are going to have to nominate people and the blue team are going to be sitting off to the side relaxing. It's not happening. I knew this right away. So Bradley is already struggling making the risottos. So Chase is running around trying to help, including to tableside at one point. He literally leaves the kitchen, goes out to Jane and John, and while he's running around being crazy, he burns his flatbread, which gets him chastised. Chastised? I'm sorry. Meanwhile, Red Kitchen, their first order of appetizers go right out thanks to Jada and Elena. The risotto and the flatbread was cooked perfectly. Ramsey and Michelle note they're doing well so far. And at this point, I'm thinking, all right, red team, they got that momentum. So right away, I'm thinking if we get a winning team, it's going to be the red team. Back over in the blue kitchen, Bradley calls 2 minutes on risotto. Antonio is worried his scallops will overcook. He says that not communicating won't get you far. And he does overcook the scallops. And Chase brings up an undercooked flatbread this time. Ramsey calls everyone in the kitchen to the pass. He says they're all over the place and they're behind the red team. So, yeah, blue team, not the best start. Sometimes it seems like Ramsey sets people up to fail, sets certain teams up to fail by putting people on stations that they're going to struggle with, including putting Cara Marie on the meat station, Cara Marie the vegan. But putting Bradley on appetizers didn't seem that bad because he got a 5 out of 5 on a signature dish. For that matter, Chase 4 out of 5. Although he did struggle in the scallop challenge, but at the same time, you might want to put someone who has something good about them with someone who is showing some struggling. But instead, they're just both struggling. So Kat says she's 1 minute out on scallops, but Jada needs 5 for her risotto. Kat doesn't appear to have communicated before starting the cook on the scallops. Ramsey asks for the scallops after wondering why they're even going, and he says they should drop with 2 minutes left on risotto. And I thought it should be 3 minutes, but I don't know. I guess different scallops night. I don't know. Ramsey notes they just did a scallop challenge for which Kat was in the top 4 for the red team, but the next scallops get approved and served. So red team still moving. Stuff is happening with them. You know, it may not be perfectly smooth, but things are happening. So Bradley making another risotto, and he puts peas in it, which he shouldn't do, and he realizes his mistake right away. And he intends to start over. But Chris asks for the pan and starts scooping the peas out with a spoon. Now, I give Chris some credit. He's trying to help here. But Ramsey finds it absurd. And he notes that a customer can see him. Like he sees a lady in the dining room who's looking into the kitchen and she sees him doing that. And Ramsey even asks her, "Do you see what he's doing?" And she's like, "Yeah." So he says they look like idiots. He tells Chris not to do that again and tells Bradley to get it together. Anthony says Bradley's brain goes somewhere else when he cooks. And he sees him messing up another risotto and tells him to restart. So while the blue team is still trying to serve their first appetizer, the red team is on entrees. Again, red team. Not a bad look so far. So their first entree order is 2 pork, 2 New York strip, 1 chicken, 1 halibut. He asks Maddie to call it back. She can't. And she sounds rather unserious about it. Like she's smiling and kind of giggly. Ramsey says, "I'm not laughing." You don't want to hear that from Ramsey. I don't think I've ever heard anyone be on the receiving end of "I'm not laughing" and went on to great things. So she keeps trying to recite the order properly, but she always says 2 chicken. That's 1. And she keeps giggling. And honestly, it's starting to give Claudia from season 22. She was very giggly and unserious about food, and she didn't last very long. Tavon from season 10, he also laughed when Ramsey criticized his cooking. But I'm not willing to call Maddie that. Ramsey just tells Maddie to take a walk and come back thinking about New York. Like you're here representing New York, take a walk, come back, and think about why you're here. So while she's gone, the rest of the team recites the ticket correctly. Then Maddie comes back and she gets it right. So at this point, I'm starting to think Maddie is probably going to be the first to go from the red team. But in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking that's not necessarily going to be tonight. The red team can still pull this out because they're still doing better than the blue team. So the blue team finally serves their first appetizers. And then Chase screws up yet another flatbread, and they are now out of cheese. It's a flatbread pizza. You can't have pizza without cheese. I mean, I guess you can, but like, why? I don't know. I feel like if there's not cheese on it, it's not pizza. It's got to be bread, cheese, and like some kind of sauce. Well, maybe not the sauce, but bread and cheese at least. Bread, cheese, and like and something like marinating on it. Like in my case, it's usually just tomato sauce. But yeah, they're out of cheese, and this is honestly reminding me of season three's Blue Team's first dinner service, where sous chef Scott had a bit of a breakdown. He's like, "We're out of effing chicken. We don't have any more Wellingtons. We're out of effing lettuce. We haven't served any food. How can we be out of anything?" So that's where my mind went. So at this point, Ramsey just has to take the flatbread off the menu, and he asks for a salad as the replacement because you can't screw that up. Trev from the first service of season 8 says hello because, yeah, he, uh, he overdressed the salads and found himself nominated. And the scary part is that, as simple a mistake as that was, he still ended up being one of the better people that season and came in fourth place and came back for rookies versus veterans. So that should really tell you how bad the talent level was in season 8. Just I watched all of that season, but that was the first season where I was like, do I even want to continue with this? But I stuck it out. Season 15, where I just gave up. I read Wikipedia to see what was happening, and I didn't watch because that was just a gross and untalented cast. Anyway, Cara Marie, nervous about cooking lamb for Ramsey. She says for the first time. I think she meant first time for Ramsey because I don't think she's never cooked lamb before. That's what I think she meant. First time in HK. So she's nervous about that, but she says in her confessional she's been cooking meat, and I just realized I spelled meat wrong in my phone. I said MEET. She's been cooking meat since before some of her teammates were even born. You know, she is one of the older people this season, ripe old age of 37, second oldest. This after on the red team at least, second oldest after Alexandra, who's 43. Anyway, she's about to serve her lamb. She tells Maddie to get her salmon skin side up. She brings up the lamb. Ramsey says it's cooked perfectly. The vegan nailed the meat. How about that? But Maddie can't serve her salmon because the skin is messed up. She starts over, but then gets overwhelmed by everyone giving her directions. Like everyone's trying to help, but admittedly, when you have five people talking to you at the same time, it can get a little overwhelming. You know, I get it. So she serves some more fish, and then Ramsey calls the fish station up, Maddie and Kat. And he points out there's an undercooked salmon and an overcooked salmon. And of course, he demands a redo. So it's around this time I'm starting to think, I don't know. I think it's going to be a joint loss. So by now, the blue team is finally onto entrees. Henry serves his first lamb. Now, Henry, very proudly from Texas. So if you're going to be proudly from Texas, that should mean you should be good at cooking meats. Serves his first lamb. We get a commercial break. It comes back. It's raw. Really, bro? And Henry notes in his confessional, you come into HK with delusions of grandeur, but when the heat's on, common sense goes out the window, which is probably the most accurate thing he said so far. So at this point, back in the Red Kitchen, Maddie is on salmon, and Kat is on pork. Pork is on the fish station for some reason. I mean, it's happened before, but I don't know. It's just I find it weird. I guess just to try and take some of the pressure off the meat station because they got the Wellingtons, the New York strip, the chicken. So fish can probably afford to work one more thing onto its station. And Elena notes that Maddie was lost just from the way she was breathing. Like just very much a mouth breather. Like we get shown two deep breaths from Maddie. She's like, I don't know if you could hear that. It didn't seem like my mic picked it up, but yeah, just Maddie was a mouth breather for a moment. Then Kat brings up her pork, and it is raw and a half. Like, like I know raw chicken is like the number one you cannot serve this raw thing, but I feel like I heard pork is another one that you can't serve raw. And this pork is so raw, it's still saying "Dip, dip, dip," that's all, folks. I just made that one up earlier today. I'm proud of it. So so Ramsey at this point is pretty much at his breaking point. He drags the women into the storeroom, shows them the raw pork and the overcooked salmon. Doesn't know how anyone could even serve pork like that. Kat owns up to it, to her credit, but Ramsey kicks them out and asks for two nominees. And I am absolutely blown away that the red team, with how the red team started, the fact that they got kicked out before the blue team, wild to me. Absolutely wild. Yes, I'm starting to come down from thinking they were going to outright win the service, but I never thought they were going to be the first ones kicked out. Well, the red team heads back to the dorms. Kara Marie is giving Maddie a hug, telling her to be more confident in herself and just trust the cook. Lisa knows that Maddie got overwhelmed from everyone talking to her. And Maddie says that in her confessional that it feels bad that her station got them kicked out, but thinks it's because of everyone's miscommunication. So I'm thinking, is this actually going to be the beginning of a turnaround for the blue team? Because Ramsey only says it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So would it be a case of like the red team started strong but fell apart and then got kicked out? Meanwhile, the blue team started rough but got better, and then they go on to win the service? We shall see. Ramsey calls two halibut, two strip for the blue team. Anthony's feeling good working with Henry. He feels that they vibe. And Anthony brings up chicken. Again, two halibut, two New York strip. Ramsey calls everyone, including tableside. He sees Jane and John. He's like, get in here. Calls everyone to the pass. Makes them repeat the order a couple times. Points out two Wellingtons and a chicken were brought up. And he kicks them out. And he wants two nominees. Bradley calls the night an embarrassment. Now, this is the third season in a row that the first dinner service ended in a joint loss. Like this was something that didn't happen much before. Like it happened for the first time in season 8, then it happened again in season 12, and that first service, I said this last week, worst dinner service in HK history because no food left either kitchen. But then there was a winner of every first service until season 22. They then that season, both teams lost the first service. And then last year, both teams lost the first service. And now here we are, season 24. Fifth time it's happened, third time in a row. Both teams lose the first service. So yeah, I feel like that's worth noting. So Maddie is defending herself and her performance. In her confessional, she actually blames Anaya for barking out orders. But Anaya was on Garnish, which is supposed to be the most vocal station, you know? Like Garnish is a station that has to know what everybody's doing at all times. And when you do well in the Garnish station, then it means you were talking to everybody. So, maybe it was a bit of sensory overload for Maddie, but in that case, maybe you should have thought of that before you signed up. Or on the blue side of things, they're debating. Ah, sorry. Antonio claims that the appetizer station didn't set the tone, which affected the fish station. Says he had to throw off scallops because of the app station's mistakes. Riley owns his mistakes on risotto, but denies being responsible for Antonio's scallops. And to be fair, there's definitely one round of overcooked scallops that's 100% on Antonio. So yeah, Riley owns his mistakes on the risotto, but denies being responsible for Antonio's scallops. And he notes that Chase screwed up so many pizzas they had to be 86th. Chase says that he nominates Bradley and Antonio. Antonio continues to say apps was the problem. Bradley notes they just did a scallop challenge. He seems to forget that Antonio was in the top three of that challenge. I mean, why weren't you in the top three, Bradley? You're from Louisiana. That's a that borders the ocean. He claims Antonio is using him as a scapegoat, and that the bottom line is that Chase 86 pizzas and Antonio screwed up scallops, which is a signature dish of Ramsey. And in my head, I'm thinking, so is risotto. So they all go downstairs to face elimination. Ramsey says the first battle of the state's service was a sorry state of affairs. I wonder if they were set up to fail just so he could say that. I mean, he was waiting for it, like, just waiting for them to screw up that badly. He asked Jada for the red team's nominees. First up is Maddie for getting flustered. Second is Kat for the raw pork. Ramsey calls Anthony for some reason, even though Anthony's mistake was what got the fluke team kicked out. But yeah, Ramsey calls Anthony for the nominees. And first nominee is Chase for his struggles with the flatbreads. The second nominee is commercial Bradley for failing to adapt. Ramsey, the four of them come forward. Maddie, Kat, Bradley, and Chase. Ramsey asks Maddie what happened. She claims the communication was too much. She's asked why she should stay. She says that she has a lot of fight in her and can learn from her mistakes. Kat says that she should stay because she's ready to work hard. Chase says he had bad timing, but he owns his mistakes. Ramsey says he was like a dog chasing his tail. He probably had that one ready too. And Bradley wants to prove to Ramsey that he should be there. He claims he was frazzled and that Chase let him down. Bradley is an interesting mix of owning up to his mistakes as well as blaming others for theirs. I don't know. I guess he's like, I went down, but I'm bringing you down with me. So, yeah, there's that. So it's decision time. Ramsey says that his decision is Cat. She steps forward, starts to say goodbye to her teammates, and starts to take her jacket off. But Ramsey tells her to get back in line. But she only goes back to the nominee line, not to the rest of her not nominated teammates. So she possibly hasn't watched this show that much. She didn't know how that works. And Ramsey decides to eliminate Maddie. He says he doesn't know how she became a sous chef at 18, but she's not ready to be his head chef. In her goodbye message, she says that she'll come back in a few years with more experience. Not sure it works that way, you know? This show has yet to bring back someone who was eliminated after the first service. But, if season 22 of Big Brother can call itself an all-star season with some of the people they brought back for that one, I guess every now and then we can get a little generous with the definition of all-stars. So they're all sent back up to the dorms. Of course, Ramsey says, F off. Kat says she lives to see another day, and she needs to step her game up. Bradley feels that Ramsey sees something in him, but he has to get it together. Chase notes he faced elimination twice in one day, and there's no promise you'd get another moment. So, that's what happened. That was episode 2. I am actually not giving up on Bradley yet, because he did get a 5 out of 5 on his signature dish. If he can actually get his head in the game, I think he might. I'm not sure he's going to win, but I think there's a world where he can get it together and he can make it to, the top 10 maybe. Chase, on the other hand, feel like he's leaving fairly soon, like next episode or two. I'll say probably next episode, unless the blue team wins the dinner service. But even then, no guarantees because people have been eliminated off the winning team before. That I'm really not sure about because she seems really inconsistent. Because on the one hand, she had that really good scallop dish earlier in the episode, but then there was that raw pork. So I don't know. I'm not sure about Cat. And my chair just sank again. Best of the worst. I'm going to start with the red team because to me it was an easy one, but a surprising one. It was Cara Marie. She surprised me mightily with her performance on the meat station. She may not eat it, but she can cook it. So I gotta give her flowers for that. For the blue team, best of the worst. There was really no one in that kitchen that really impressed me. So I'm going to say Jaden and John because they were doing tableside. They weren't in the kitchen. They weren't in the disaster area. And I never said there can't be multiple best of the worst. It can happen. I mean, season 10, top 11, Justin, Clemenza, and Brian were all the best of the worst because they were the only three that finished the service. In fact, the blue team should have just outright won that service, but Ramsey really just wanted to get rid of Patrick at that point. And the red team just caused so much drama that they had to be kept intact a little while longer. But yeah, that's usually my go-to. Somebody, if there's nobody in the actual kitchen that impresses me, then I'm just gonna sort of default to tableside if there is anyone on tableside. Last thing I want to talk about: did Ramsey make the right decision, or in this case, decisions? Because two people left in this episode. Like I said, I don't like eliminating people before the first dinner service. That being said, Carlos's dish was unforgivable. Like when I saw him skewer that scallop, I was just like, no, you can't do that. It looked so wrong to me. So if someone had to go, then yeah, I'm glad it was Carlos. If someone had to go pre-dinner service, yeah, Ramsey made the right decision eliminating us in that regard. As far as Maddie, yes, I do think he made the right decision with her too. Her inexperience was very obvious, so yeah, she deserved to go. You know, she seems like someone who has some good traits about her. I mean, like again, 4 out of 5 signature dish, so she can cook. Just this might have been a little bit of an overwhelming experience for her. But yeah, that will do it for this stream. Thank you to my one viewer for watching, and if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. Also, quick shout out to the person who last week in the comments on my YouTube video of the stream, they just came in with all the stats, like the number of confessionals everybody got, the the mistakes that people made. Like if you're watching this video again, thank you. I greatly appreciate that because it has helped me greatly with my draft that I'm going to do. Because Ellie has not gotten a single confessional yet. Not one. 2 episodes, 0 confessionals. Now, there were people that went under the radar and went on to great things, but Ellie is not even being shown. Like she occasionally says something in the background. So just that is like a severe lack of edit. That's not memorable first boot. That's forgettable fifth or sixth boot. So yeah, Ellie is going to be dead last on my draft list. And she already was because she was the first person to have her signature dish tasted. And as I said last week, there's a curse. The first person to have their signature dish tasted in HK has never gone on to win. So yeah, Ellie will not be on my team. Like I will pick people that are probably going to leave, that I expect to leave before her, but I will pick them before her because just that is like there's an invisible edit and then there's no edit. I mean, invisible. Not, I said that wrong. Invisible edit is no edit. An under the radar edit is what I meant to say. So yeah, there have been people that were under the radar at first and went on to succeed. People like Paula in season 5, Justin in season 10, but eventually they emerged and they were getting some focus early on. Like they'd at least appear in a confessional to remind you, hey, I'm here. Ellie's not even getting that. So Ellie's dead last on my draft list. And I get to go first, so I'm not picking her. All right. That'll do it for this stream. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out.